And you are all set, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, James. I want to welcome everybody to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission for June 9th, 2021. And if you could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, approval of the agenda. I'll ask the town planner, Renata, do we have any changes for the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, we're at roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, James. I apologize. Noreen, could you do the roll call, please?
Chairman Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Claffey,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Came out very heavily.
Here.
for anyone
Commissioner Havens,
Here.
Commissioner Lowris,
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Here.
Commissioner Woods,
Here.
Commissioner Braverman,
Here.
Commissioner Gill,
Here.
Commissioner Haggerty.
Here.
All set.
Thank you very much, Noreen.
Sure.
I just want to remind everybody, if you could put your phones on mute until you have a question. I'll go now to the town planner, Renata, and I'll ask you whether or not the agenda is all set, or do we have any changes?
Mr. Chair, we do have a change on our both public hearing and business meeting agenda.
Okay.
So our petition 2621 and 2821 for special permit to allow creation of 2 interior lots on each one of these 2 parcels at, what's the address here? At 285 and 293 Connecticut Avenue. We cannot proceed with this application in our review, and we have actually flagged that out to you in our memo to the commission. There is a discrepancy between what is allowed under our zoning regulations versus how many lots are allowed to be created in our subdivision regulations. So these petitions have to be removed off of the agenda. And then under my report, we will talk about which way the commission would like me to proceed with regulation amendment on this.
Okay, so before you move to the next ones, just so everybody from the public understands, we're going to be removing, and we will not be talking about 26.21 or 2821 on Connecticut Avenue, just so the public understands. And the next correction, Renata?
Next correction is under new business. There's still 2 applications for the subdivision for this same project. This requires a special permit and site plan approval, as well as the subdivision approval. And those subdivisions that are listed under new business petition A 25-21 and B petition 27-21 will also not be heard tonight.
Okay, very good. Any questions from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask if Commissioner Havens, if you could read the procedures for the public hearing.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Procedures for public hearings. The order of proceedings in public hearings shall be as follows. A, convening by the chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead.
Mr. Chairman, not to interrupt,
Yes.
we're at public participation right now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you
Okay.
again. Thank you again, James. I'm sorry, Commissioner. If we could hold off for a minute after the approval of the agenda, I overstepped the public participation. So we will move to public participation. For items not listed on the agenda, speakers are limited to 2 minutes. With your Zoom application, you could raise your hand if you'd like to participate during public participation. Is there anybody out there that would like to speak? Please raise your hand, or If you're calling in to the Zoom meeting by telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand to be recognized.
Does not appear we have anybody in the audience at this time looking to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. And the next thing on the agenda is the zoning enforcement officer report. So we'll go to Eric and he can present his report to us.
Good evening, commissioners. You see the report before you. Are there any questions or concerns? The item of note, we're still waiting on the town attorney to take action on the Stam Road situation. Other than that, everything is in the report there for the last month.
Okay. Is there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Claffey?
Just one question on 1615 Main Street. I keep seeing like no cars, many cars, no cars, many cars. Is there any other violations out there other than the cars?
Not that I'm aware of. They removed at least one unregistered vehicle early on. There may be another one there. She's kind of working with me. There are a lot of cars that come and go there. Yes.
Have we tried to decide if the home has become a boarding house of any type other than a typical rental property? Because I think it's a single family home, unlike some of the houses across the street.
It is single family home. I've talked to the owner. It's supposedly all family members.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions from the commissioners? How's the chicken regulations been working out, Eric?
They seem fine. I've had a few rooster complaints, as you saw in the report. The roosters have been removed, and I've given the people the packet for the permit. A couple have come in, others are still working on it.
Okay, so it's been helpful tool
Yep.
for you?
Yep.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
If there's no other questions for our zoning enforcement officer, we'll move on. Any remarks from commissioners? This is the next thing on the agenda, remarks from commissioners.
I have a question, Dominic.
Certainly, Commissioner, go right ahead.
I'd like to ask our town planner, are there any regulations in our, or anything that would go toward town-owned property or state-owned property or federally owned property? And basically the maintenance and upkeep of said properties.
So we have a code of ordinance, and I am not sure that there is anything in there. I mean, I would have to review that. I'm not sure if there's anything there addressing town properties or state or federal. We did exempt Newington, exempt itself from its own zoning regulations, so zoning doesn't apply. Some other land regulations do apply. So if you have an environmental concern or something like that, then there are avenues to talk about that.
Would do any regulations involve the blight and / maintenance of town-owned or state or federal?
I am not sure whether or not the town of Newington has exempted itself out of our blight ordinances. We can look into that and get back to it.
It's nothing, just maybe something if you have a free moment, no rush.
Sure.
I think that's a good question, Commissioner. I mean, if there's something particular that you'd like to discuss, I think you should send a message to Renata. I would hope that the town will, even though if they may be exempt, if there is a problem that you've noticed, I would hope that, that we hold ourselves, the town, to the same standards that we're holding everybody else to. And I believe it's important to do that. So please let me know and Renata know if there's something that you're concerned with, okay?
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioner remarks? Okay, hearing none, we're going to go to the public hearing section of the of our agenda. And now I will ask Commissioner Havens if he could read the procedures for the public hearing, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Procedures for public hearings. The order of proceedings of public hearings shall be as follows. A, convening by chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by applicant, limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application, limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application, limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant, limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition, limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitations should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall an extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And our first public hearing petition is petition 29-21. I'd ask if Commissioner Lenars, if you could read that for me.
Absolutely. Petition 2921 zoning text amendment, section 3.19.1 to allow a drive-through restaurant in the PD zone without drive-through requirements of section 3.15.4. Applicant Gibbs Oil Company, contact Kenneth R. Slater Jr. Esquire.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is Ken Slater representing the applicant.
How are you? If you'd like to give us a little briefing on this, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I would. As I think you all remember, we were before you with a plan that, after consulting with the former town planner and economic development director, a plan for a relatively large area near the site that Gibbs Oil has its gas station at the corner of West Hill and Willard for a PD zone change. And what came out of that public hearing is a great deal of support for our proposal that what we planned to come in for, which was a special permit for a Dunkin' drive-through, that the Dunkin', existing Dunkin' restaurant next door would move, and there would be a new facility constructed for a Phillips 66 gas station. And there was a great deal of support for our properties to be changed, and there was concern about the other side where there weren't any actual development plans proposed for it. And your commission approved the PD zone change. We were preparing to file a special permit when our engineer, and unfortunately he can't be here tonight, Richard DeFusco, he had a death in the family, but he would be critical for the special permit site plan application that we simultaneously filed, but can't be decided until this application is considered and hopefully approved. He realized that your regulations for the drive-through restaurants, as you know, many of your regulations build upon themselves, and the uses that are allowed in a particular zone are incorporated from that of another zone. And the drive-through restaurants in the PD zone, if you then go to the Berlin Turnpike zone, there are a number of specific requirements that were included that you'd have to meet in order to have a drive-through restaurant, including having a distance of 300 feet from a residence. while that might make sense in the Berlin Turnpike, the PD zones are greatly varied and may present opportunities for example, our site, and as you heard from the public support when we had it presented during the previous public hearing, but the distance, 300 feet, we wouldn't be able to comply with that regulation. Now, when we represent a lot of towns and we draft, and I'm sure there was a good reason to put those very specific criteria for drive-through restaurants in the Berlin Turnpike zone, we favor the flexibility of the special permit criteria. And by using the special permit criteria, you could evaluate a site like ours and decide whether, given current technology, current site conditions, the way that the site and the neighborhood is configured, that the drive-through restaurant would be appropriate even if located less than 300 feet away from a residence. On the other hand, if you can do just the opposite, that if it's located in a way where it's too proximate to residences and there's concerns about the drive-through restaurant, you have a great deal of discretion to do that. And if I could, I will share my screen and zoom in on exactly what I mean. Is my screen showing?
We have a regulation up.
There we go.
Okay, now it is.
Okay, so what I've jumped to is under 5.2 of your regulations are the standards that apply to all special permits. So, and it talks about how they're necessary to protect public health, safety, convenience, and property values, because special permits, as you know, they're not automatically permitted. It's a use that your commission has decided might be appropriate in the zone, but the applicant has to come in, present the information to you to satisfy you that some relatively general considerations have been met, including under 5.26, that there's a need for the proposed use in the proposed location, that the existing and probable future character of the neighborhood. And I won't go through all of them, but these are the examples of general criteria, including G, safeguards to protect adjacent properties and neighborhoods in general. That gives you the authority when you were looking at a special permit application. If someone was to propose a drive-through restaurant and it was configured, perhaps the drive-through window was in a location that you didn't think was appropriate given the layout, you'd have the discretion to require a change or to deny it. And so what we've proposed in this instance is for the PD zone, we include the definition of a drive-through restaurant in the definitions, and I'm going to stop sharing here. And so including the drive-in restaurant definition, and then in the PD zone, just list the drive-through restaurant as being one of the permitted uses in the zone. And by doing that, you'd be able to, and there's thank you, James. The actual definition would be contained in the regulations, and then in the list of uses, that use, restaurant / drive-through, would be included as one of the uses allowed in the PD zone. And then that would enable you to consider, as I indicated, we had filed our actual special permit and site plan application, which is pending, subject to the commission's review. But if I could ask, James, if you could go to page 3 of our plan sheet. And this is the same plan that was presented in the public hearing, not in detail. It was not the site plan, but it shows the area where the pumps would be, the entrance, using the existing entrances from Willard Avenue. And then the Dunkin' would be located with a drive-through on the rear of that building, and a convenience station, so convenience store rather. If you could jump to page 15. And this just, again, I'm just briefly overviewing it because as you know, for the purpose of this application, it's for, does this make sense for the PD regulations generally? But I'm showing this is we would have the opportunity, if you made these changes, to come before you, go through these plans in detail, and demonstrate that they satisfy the criteria of the special permit criteria. This is the interior view, and it shows where the building, how it would be configured inside. And the next page, page 16. And that just shows a basic elevation of the building where the Dunkin' is on the side, and then it would have a food mart. But we have, elevations submitted for the new improvements to the actual gas pumps and station. And we really want to have the opportunity to be able to come before the commission with those plans. And I think from what we heard before, the neighborhood would be interested in our being able to go forward. So I reviewed the staff report and very pleased and we're of equal mind, and that is it's better to have a regulation that gives you flexibility. So by just adding it as a use and taking away those very specific criteria, that the town planner is in agreement with our perspective that is a good idea, so that you can look among the various locations where PD zones are, and some may be appropriate for drive-in restaurants, and that would be vested in your discretion. So you don't lose any. The existing way the regulations are take off the table opportunities, while if our change is adopted, it doesn't take away your discretion to say no, but it gives you the ability to say yes if you see a good plan. And I think you will see, if you agree with these changes and adopt them, I think we will show you a very good plan, and would hope that we could gain your support with a special permit and site plan approval as well. If you have any questions, we have, the owner, certainly the representative of Gibbs Oil is online, and also the owner of the property that was improved that also contains the existing Dunkin', and or his lawyer, and that Dunkin' again would be moved onto our site. So I know they're online, but this was the basic presentation we wanted to give to the commission. Any questions you might have?
Very good. Thank you, Attorney Slater. I'll ask the town planner if she would like to say something before I go to the public, or she'd like to reserve her comments until after public.
My comments are essentially displayed on the screen right now. I will just reiterate what I said in my memo. Currently, we have, first of all, we have a drive-through restaurant defined in our regulations. It is defined in the specific section that allows it to begin with. So I believe that providing a definition, which is similar with the exception that, we currently specifically prohibit serving of alcohol through the drive-through windows. The definition, proposed definition, is properly placed. I don't have any feelings about whether or not the liquor is allowed to be served. It's not something that's commonly done, and it requires a number of other special permits. So the commission, should that ever be a case with somebody, the commission will have a look at that. And secondly, I believe, and I think I have stated this to the commission previously, that one of the main elements that are going to help us in future with economic development is to have flexible regulations that we constantly look at and revise as the time and market conditions in world change. So I'm in agreement that it's probably better to have to eliminate the specific distance requirements and look at this on a side-by-side basis by special permit.
Okay, very good, Renata. Thank you very much for that report. Yes, this was changed a number of years ago, is extremely restrictive. I think I think there's a few commissioners that were on when this happened. It is extremely restrictive, and it might be a benefit to us and the town to be more flexible. So at this time, if there's no questions from the commissioners right now, I'll go to the public. Is there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, Chairman Payne, if I remember correctly, when we were discussing this originally, the property to the west of the old Shop Easy there's a residential property line that goes right down the middle of that parking lot. Has that been addressed in this plan or not?
I'll ask the applicant, Attorney Slater, if he could answer that.
No, I'm not aware of that issue. The site that the location where we have the building and improvement is all part of the PD zone. Are you talking about adjoining property or our actual property?
No, I'm talking about the property that the existing Dunkin' Donuts is in right now. To the west, where the old where Kenny Smith used to live, the first house on the right-hand side is going down West Hill. If I remember correctly in the plans, there was a property line dividing residential to the left, commercial to the right. It was right down the middle of that parking lot. I'm just wondering, is that going to be addressed here tonight or at some other point? Because I remember in the original discussion we had, both of these properties are going to be combined somehow, if I'm not mistaken.
We'll be prepared to answer that question in more detail if we're able to proceed with our site plan and special permit, if the commission would allow that.
That would be more of a site plan issue at a later date.
Right, but it's on here right now. You can see the R12 zone to the left and zone B to the right. I was just questioning if that's right.
Understood.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner Fox? Commissioner Fox, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Attorney Slater, am I to understand that this text amendment would remove the minimum distance from a drive-through to the nearest resident in the PD district, in the PD zone only, not in BBT?
That's correct.
Okay, I just can't figure out why. I mean, you talk about technology being a lot better, but I don't know. I feel that we should keep that 300 feet because in spite of any technology improvements, they're still going to have to. The residents are still going to be inconvenienced. So I'm not too sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, we're going to go to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak in favor of this application? Okay, and we have Mr. Camillo. Counselor Camillo.
Okay, how's that?
Yep, we can hear you now, Counselor.
I live across the street at 126. I think this is a great improvement for the area. And with today's technology, depending on where they put the menu and all that with the speaker, I'm sure they can do something with it. Because right now, if you go back to all the way to the car wash, it's basically a drive-through also, because it talks to you. It's got a speaker on it. It asks you what car wash you want. And that's within 60 feet of the property or less. So this is really good. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the application?
Attorney Timothy Fury, can you hear me? It won't allow me to raise my hand.
Yes, go right ahead, sure.
Thank you. Attorney Timothy Fury, 43 Bellevue Avenue, Bristol, Connecticut. I represent the adjacent property owner who's present with me here today, where the Pro Health facility was renovated. So to answer one of the commissioner's questions, a portion of the adjacent property is zoned residential. There was not a need to do any merger because it is only considered one property today. And the portion that is zoned residential is used and has been used for decades as a parking field. And it remains so today. When we renovated the building, and you've seen the quality of the work that was done next door, we did renovate the parking area, but we didn't expand it or change it. So it didn't require any special changes to zoning. But there is no intention to change the nature of what's happening there, because the parking is necessary for the functionality of the adjacent property. So that's really a commission-based thing. If you decided you wanted to change that zone to have it be consistent, it doesn't affect us based on the long-term plans of the property, because it's already been renovated. In terms of this project, we're obviously in support of it. We would like to be able to move the Duncan facility next door and then renovate the balance of this property and repurpose it similar than to what we've done with Pro Health, and to enhance the area even more. We have a current relationship with this vendor. We have a facility that we leased from them and helped develop just like this from the ground up in East Granby, Connecticut, not far from the airport. And it's a beautiful facility, well-maintained, and well run by both vendors. And we hope to have the same type of effect on your community and relationship here. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Attorney. And I appreciate you clarifying the question for the commissioner. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone else speaking in favor of the application? Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition? One last time, if there's anybody on the public that would like to speak in opposition, now would be the time to raise your hand. Okay, hearing none. We'll go to the commissioners. Renata, do you see any problems with us closing this application? Commissioner Wood?
You want, Renata can answer.
Commissioner Woods, if you could hold on 1 second,
Yep.
Renata.
Absolutely not. But before you close, I will just make a reference to consistency with plan of conservation and development of this. As you know, whenever you're acting on the regulation change, you are required to consider the town's plan of conservation and development. I believe that this proposal is consistent with the plan and specifically with Chapter 9, which deals with the economic development. One of the overall goals on page 55 of this chapter says that one of the goals is to promote reuse and redevelopment of existing properties where appropriate, and to take advantage of good locations and utility services. On the very next page of the plan, page 56, there is a table where the policies that are identified that we should support through zoning decisions. In particular, the policy number 1, 2, 5, and 7, this project is consistent with. So that completes my report.
Thank you very much, Renata. Commissioner Woods and then Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question, and I guess it maybe would go to the planner or you, Mr. Chairman, because I haven't been on the commission as long as obviously you and some of the others have. But just come to mind, I'm popping in my head here, 2 drive-throughs, one on Cedar Street, one on the Berlin Turnpike. And if I'm following this correctly, there's supposed to be a 300-foot distance. I don't believe either one of those meets that criteria already. 300 feet is definitely in striking distance of the residential section from the drive-through on Cedar Street. And it's far under 300 feet for the one that's on the Berlin Turnpike. And those are just two that come to mind.
It's possible that the one on Cedar Street was in and built before that regulation went into effect. And I'd have to confirm that with the town planner, but that's possible that there are a couple places that were already constructed before this regulation. This regulation was proposed a number of years ago. I personally think that 300 feet is a little excessive. We only have 100 feet for the auto regulations, yet we have 300 feet for a drive-through. I think it can be, I think our special regulations and our special exceptions gives us enough power to protect the residents without that requirement of 300 feet, but that's just my opinion.
And Mr. Chairman, I would tend to agree with you. I don't, this has been a commercial piece of property for as long as I can remember. I'm more than likely going to be in favor of moving this forward.
Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, for one thing, this is not why I raised my hand. I believe you're correct. The 300 feet, it was put in quite a while ago. I do remember, I think, a Kentucky Fried Chicken wanting to open up a drive-through restaurant and off part of the turnpike. And by then, we had changed it. But I agree also with Commissioner Woods. There are some businesses closer than 300 feet to residences. And considering the fact that, whatever neighbors came out for it, and those are the only neighbors that came out, and I've always been of the impression of the idea that if you're not coming out, then I guess you're in favor. So I wouldn't object to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, if there's Mr. Hinckley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can just point out that a couple of those restaurants on the turnpike in the past have gotten variances for that speaker issue.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no objection from the commissioners, I think that we could close petition 29-21 and move it to old business for discussion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Commissioner
Second,
Woods
Commissioner Havens.
and seconded by Commissioner Havens. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. Okay, the next petition on the agenda is petition 31-21. And if Commissioner Claffey could read that, I'd appreciate it.
Petition 31-21 special permit section 6.2.5 to allow a freestanding 300 square foot sign at the southwest corner of 16 Fen Road. Applicant Vincent Orzia and Dominic DiAgostino. Owner Fen Road Associates LLC. Contact Mark S. Shipman.
Thank you, Commissioner. The applicant is here. If you could brief us on this, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe Paul, are you there? Paul Staransky?
Yep. Good evening. For the record, Paul Szymanski, professional engineer representing the applicant. We have submitted plans for the record showing a freestanding sign. Originally, it was in conflict with the fast track sign that is located on the corner of Miracone Way and Fen Road. At the request of staff, we moved it so they work cooperatively with each other. It's a freestanding sign, which is compliant with the regulations. It's 18 feet maximum height, 10 feet wide, and compliant with respect to the square footage of 150 square feet per side. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And how, the placement of it, do you have a map showing the placement of it by any chance?
I believe you guys have that. If you click on the agenda.
On the site plan in the corner, Paul.
That one I do
Yeah.
not have. If you'd like, if you have it, you can share from that.
Okay, hold on one second, guys. Let me share. So it's located in the corner of the site. So the current fast track sign is shown as sign in gray. And then we have the proposed freestanding sign, 10 foot by 15 foot, 18 foot maximum height. So it's about 5 feet off both property lines.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll go to Renata, our town planner, for a report on this.
Mr. Chair, the sign meets zoning regulations in the location that is proposed for, in the area of signage, as well as with the height. It's 18 feet high, 300 square feet total of signage, and located in the compliant location. I had expressed previously that I'm not a huge fan of the flashiness of this. However, this is a sign, so in particularly, this is where I don't believe that the commission should get engaged into moderating colors or messaging or anything like that. Messaging is you can't do anyways, but I would stay away from either discussing colors or anything like that.
Mhm. Okay, that's good. I just want to know, make sure everything was complied with. And at this time, we'll go to the public. Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of this application? Please raise your hand. Anybody wishing to speak in favor? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, hearing none. Commissioner Claffey?
Only question I had is, this was brought up, I think, at the last meeting. One of the commissioners asked about signage. And correct me, it might not be this one, but this commission had discussed about directional signage and any other advertising signage that sometimes these establishments have around their property. Was anything brought up? I'm only asking just so that we have one sign, but then the building gets built and you see signs on building, you see signs on other areas. That I know there was a question before about like building signage. It might not be this specific property. I'm kind of, I think it was a car wash, but I don't remember which one.
Okay, I mean, the subject right now is this one thing, but I'll turn it over to our town planner to see if she can answer that question for you. Renata, I think you're muted.
Of course I am. So all those other signs on the building, temporary signage, that is regulated by regulations and the zoning officer, not to the commission. So the signs that are displayed on the building, as long as they meet the regulations, we have to approve them. And the commission really does not get to act on that through the special permit process. This is the only type of sign that requires special permit. And yes, to answer your question, this is the one that you will be acting on, but they're allowed to have more signage, and they will have that. They will have wall signs and perhaps some temporary signage as well if they apply for it.
Thank you, Renata.
Okay, that's, I guess, just what brings up the confusion when these buildings get put in and then we get complaints that all people see are signs. It's nothing to be discussed here, but I think it needs to be addressed at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the planner, Renata. So we can assume that between the freestanding sign and any wall signs that were there, and I don't remember if there were because I was out sick, do not are not overdone, that they're within regulations. In other words, they're within the maximum footage.
They have to either meet the regulation or get the variance.
Okay.
There is no other way around it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Gill.
Yeah, just a quick, as far as the address on the building, is that referred to as signage, or is that just the address?
I don't believe we count the address as the signage. If it's an informational, if it's identification sign that is kind of a freestanding sign with an address on it, then the address would be included in the whole sign area, but normally the address on the building is not counted towards signage.
All right, I notice a lot of towns, it seems as though they require that the address being on the sign. And I've talked about this before in regards to signs that we don't know who they belong to. And if we had it that they had to have the address on there, on the sign, part of it, that would be helpful. The other thing that ends up being an issue is the sign, the address number has to be on the street side of, so it would have to face Fen Road. If this has if it's 16 Fen Road, the address sign needs to be on the west side of the building. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, we've heard from the public. The commissioners, if there's no objection, I would propose that we close petition 31-21 and move it to old business for discussion.
So moved.
Moved by Fox. Do I have a second?
Second by Sobieski.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. Seconded by Commissioner Sobieski. Any discussion? Comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor to move this to old business, close this public hearing and move it to old business for discussion? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously to close petition 31-21 and move it to old business for discussion.
I said no.
Okay, next thing on our agenda is the approval of minutes of 5/26/21. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion made by Commissioner Sobieski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Fox. Is there any corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously to approve the minutes of 5/26/21. Okay, we're gonna skip down. We have nothing in new business. We're gonna go to old business. And if Commissioner Haggerty, if you could read petition 15-21.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Petition 15-21, special permit, section 5.2 and 6.11 to allow a new car wash facility at 16 Fen Road. Applicant Vincent Porzio and Dominic D'Agostino, owner. Fen Road Associates LLC, contact Mark S. Shipman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add before I go to the town planner?
Oh, I think it was all discussion. This special permit, I can't add anything, so.
Okay.
It's, what is in the record is in the record.
Thank you very much, Attorney Shipman. Renata, do you have anything to add to this?
Mr. Chair, yes. So we left this application because at the time we last met on this and held a public hearing on it, there was an engineering comment that dealt with the radius on the curb for this project that did not meet our zoning regulations, and it could not have been approved by the commission under the TOD incentives. As you remember, we talked about them perhaps needing a variance or needing to revise their plans and proposal to address that so that it does not require variance. So the commission also at the time discussed to some extent whether or not the proposed use was considered to be a transit-oriented development type of use. And I believe that at least my understanding was that the commission thought that the use was appropriate, which then allowed me to put this motion that essentially requires you to find the use of TOD use, which allows you to grant them those two TOD incentives that they were seeking: reduction of the proposed landscaping and location of the retaining wall closer to 5 feet to the property line. With that being said, the applicant did revise their plans, and in addition to addressing the particular issue that we had, which at the time needed a variance, they also have subsequently addressed all of our engineering and zoning comments. So at this time, I feel that it's appropriate, if the commission desires to do that, to act on it. And should you approve it, the motion is shown on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much, Renata. Commissioner Sobieski, do you have a question?
Yes, for Renata. Can you show me where in the TOD that allows us to waive that? That's my question. Let me finish. I've asked you several times. I know we did the TOD and I was here for that. We agreed to lighten up the green space and everything else, but we're not allowed to waive this under motor fuel.
We're not waiving anything. There's incentives. So don't use the word waive, because there's nothing in the regulation that says waiving the regulations. There's incentives to help for development in the area. So I'll turn it over to Renata. If you could explain that for the commissioner, I'd appreciate it.
James, can you by any chance pull up section 319A of the zoning regulation. And while we are waiting for this, what I'm specifically looking for is 3.19.A.4 of the TOD regulation. So while James is Googling this thing up, and he will, I believe, share it with us. There you go. It was in my last memo. So this is allowed, Commissioner Solbiaski, under section 319A.4. This is a section in our zoning regulation that essentially says that if you contain any of the specific objectives and uses that are described in paragraph 2C, the applicant may be eligible for the following incentives. This paragraph 2C is in section that talks about the general consistency and general purpose of the TOD zoning district. So in my memo for the last meeting, I had included all that language for you and asked you to think about whether this proposed use was a TOD use. If you agree that the use is a TOD type of use, then by your regulations, you are allowed to give them incentives, and those incentives include things such as reduced front, side, and rear yard setbacks. As long as they meet this eligibility requirement that's listed under 1 through 5, and all of this was discussed again to some length last time, they're eligible for the TOD incentives, which include the front, side, and rear yard setbacks to all structures, including retaining wall. So that is how that comes in. If you are disputing that there is a problem with our regulation, then that's a matter really for the commission to review under the regulatory review, not necessarily on a project by project base.
My question still is that I thought we have to be 5 feet off the property line. That's my question. Now, if you're telling me that we can put something right up against the property line and that this allows you to do that, I'd like to see where it says that. It just says reduce the setbacks. It doesn't say property line. That's my entire thing here. Okay? When Moda's decision came out, and I remember this clearly, I know Commissioner Payne was on here, and so was Commissioner Fox and Commissioner Claffey. We went through everything and said we could not waive anything.
Yeah, we're not waiving it. This is a setback, reduced front, side, and rear yard setbacks. So you can reduce them. And that's what the applicant, I believe, is doing.
I don't agree with you. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Commissioner Gill?
Yes. Now, as far as the lighting in that roadway, is that involved with this?
Right.
Yes, Commissioner Gill, under the site plan, the applicant will present to you a plan which will include some of this information that is specific to site plan development. Special permit application, the public hearing has been closed and the applicant can no longer introduce any new information to you. So with special permit, what you're really considering is more matters of whether or not this use as proposed is appropriate in this area. The site plan section of that is relevant to an extent that you must meet the site plan regulations, but the site plan itself will be presented to you in a moment, I believe.
Yeah, that's next on the agenda, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I wasn't sure that car wash was, one of the venues that's supposed to be in the TOD. But I would now kind of bow to the town planner's definition and explanation. And since that's the case, my objection to the, and I'll use the term waiver, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, or the incentive of moving the guardrail less than 5 feet, to me, that's a safety issue. But if the commission thinks it's safe, if especially the town planner thinks it's safe, I would have no objection.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Commissioner Claffey?
My only, in regards to A3 there, when we talk about in zoning language, reduced front, side, and rear setbacks, those are 2 property lines. They're not to anything else. Everything has a setback to a property line and or sometimes occasionally to other buildings. But in that terminology, it was able to reduce the buildings setback requirements to the property line so that they could make certain facilities meet the requirement of the TOD and overlays, etc. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussion? For the special permit for the use, it was determined at our last meeting that it was a TOD. It's gone through our staff and they have no problems with it. So if there's no other questions, we'll call for a vote. Noreen, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Chairman, you still need to move the motion first.
I'm sorry. Thank you, James. Could I have Commissioner Woods, could you move the motion, please?
I apologize, I was muted. Petition 15-21, special permit, section 5.2 and 6.11 to allow a new car wash facility at 16 Fen Road. Applicant Vincent Barrazzo and Dominic D'Agostino, owner Fen Road Associates LLC. Contact Mark S. Shipman. Approved. Move to find the proposed car wash use meets the general objectives of the TOD overlay zone as outlined in sections 3.19.A.1 and 3.19.A.2 of the zoning regulations, and to grant the TOD incentives to, number 1, allow the reduced landscaping, 3,150 square feet of interior landscaping allowed, 4,603 square feet required, and 2, to locate retaining wall on the easterly side of the property less than 5 feet from the property line. Move to approve the special permit to allow a car wash in TOD overlay zone. Reason for the approval: the proposal meets the special permit and site plan criteria in section 5.2 and 5.3 of the Newington zoning regulations.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods, for the motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Havens.
Seconded by Commissioner Havens. Is there any discussion? Okay, Noreen, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Surely. Commissioner Claffey,
Yay.
Commissioner Fox,
Yay.
Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
Commissioner Linares,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobieski,
With reservations, yes.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Chairman Payne.
Yes. Okay, the motion for approval for petition 15-21 is approved unanimously. Commissioner Sobieski, do you have a question?
Oh, I'm all done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next petition is petition 16-21. If I could have Commissioner Linares read that.
Absolutely. Petition 16-21, site plan approval at 16 Fen Road, applicant Vincent Porzio and Dominic D'Agostino, owner Fen Road Associates, contact Mark S. Shipman. Petition 22-21, move to approve the site plan application at above listed location. Reasons for the approval. The proposal meets the site plan criteria in section 5.3 of the Newington zoning regulations.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Lenars. Do I have a second?
Second, Claffey.
Seconded by Claffey. We're going to go into discussion before we vote on anything. Renata?
I just wanted to remind you that before you vote, you may want to have the applicant present the newest renditions of the site.
We can do that right now. We won't vote on it yet. I was going to get your report on it. If the applicant would like to discuss the new items that were changed, I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Paul, if you would.
Yep. Good evening. For the record, again, Paul Szymanski, professional engineer representing the applicant. We made a couple modifications to the plans based on comments at the last meeting. Just pull up my screen. One of the primary changes that was made to the plan was to modify the curb radiuses at both Miracone Way as well as the area into the private driveway of the Stop and Shop Plaza. Those radii have been modified so that they comply with the regulations and no longer need a variance. At the request of the commissioners, we also added some additional lighting along the access driveway between Miracone Way and the access driveway. One thing that I do want to bring up with respect to that is we did note the light poles that were there on Miracone Way appear to be a custom light pole and fixture that was made for Connecticut Fast Track when all the locations were made. We've reached out to 3 different lighting manufacturers and have not been able to find this pole and fixture. So we did not know if there was an alternative that could be considered that we could use, or if perhaps anyone had any insight as to that pole and fixture. We're happy to, consider anything that you may recommend. The other modification that was made is on the elevations. We did add the red back to the vacuums, as you were so kind to consider at the last meeting, so that it can match our brand. Other things that we did were some housekeeping items where we did a turning template for emergency vehicle access to demonstrate that the town's turning template worked. We also provided Gary and the engineering department with additional details as it related to the sidewalks, construction details, the connection of the drainage to the state of Connecticut drainage system is modified. Previously, it was tying into the catch basin, and Gary had requested, as was the original intent of the DOT, to connect to an existing manhole located down gradient, which we have done as part of this proposal. And then that connects, that's the existing drainage system, which goes into the state of Connecticut DOT drainage system. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for adding those things. I appreciate it. Commissioner Sobieski, do you have a question?
Yes, Paul, if you were to contact CONDOT, the bus section down there, they would have a list of vendors, or they could give you a list of these vendors that made those poles.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot who's down there now, but they should have it, or they have the vendor there. That should help you out.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Gill?
Yes. As far as the sidewalk, now, are we talking about a sidewalk from Miracone to the shopping center?
Yes. know, along Fen, the only sidewalk shown, Commissioner, is on Fen Road. We have not shown a sidewalk on the east side of the property.
Okay. Maybe this question would be to our engineering chairman.
I can ask Renata if she, you're asking if there was a sidewalk where now? Commissioner?
From Miracone to the shopping center on the east side of that property, in line with the sidewalk that is going to be placed at the hotel. And hopefully we can also get the state to move their crosswalk to that location instead of having that crosswalk that is not there. It has worn away and is not visible right now. And that was placed at an angle, and is not part of their regs to have that at an angle. So what would be better is if they had a crosswalk from the sidewalk that's going to come down from the hotel and then join with a sidewalk that would go over to the shopping center.
Okay, I'll turn the meeting over to Renata to see if she can get her opinion on that.
Mr. Chair, I between me and the town engineer, we both believe that in a TOD area, you cannot have too many sidewalks. And I agree that this location would also call in for a sidewalk, and it would be helpful to have one there. I will also point out to the commission that this particular driveway is really located off of the car wash property, and it would be considered and requested off-site improvement. So the applicant may wish to answer this question on their own. Their attorney is here, but if it were up to me, I would recommend definitely yes, include the sidewalk in this little section as well.
Is that access road going to belong to the car wash, or is that going to belong to the next property?
No, it belongs to the next property.
Yeah, if I might comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We have no authority to put a sidewalk on that. It's not a matter of we don't agree to. At some point in time, the owner, the Penn Road Associates, which I also happen to represent, will wish to develop the property to the rear, which is why we're subdivided in the first place. And I don't want to say that you should demand that they put a sidewalk in, because I think it depends on what else is happening around there. But I think that this is appropriate for development of the rear parcel as opposed to the front parcel. We think that we discussed this with staff yesterday. It's kind of our opinion that the major foot traffic, not necessarily vehicle traffic, will be along Fen Road. And that's the appropriate place, at least now, for the sidewalk. But we don't control that roadway to be able to put a sidewalk in there now.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. I appreciate it. So we can address that sidewalk when a development comes to the rear of that site. Hopefully that answers all the commissioners' questions. Is there any other questions from the commissioners? Any other questions from the commissioners? We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. We've
Mr.
discussed
Chair.
it. Yes, Renata.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to ask that if the commission would like to do that, to request those lighting fixtures, those specific lighting fixtures, to make that a modification of the site plan. I would recommend against that though, because I'm not sure if they will be able to find them.
I'm also against that too, Renata, because I don't think we've made that requirement to the other development that we just approved over there. Am I mistaken? I mean, I don't think
You're correct, Mr. Chairman. We didn't put any lighting type or specific brand just because CT Fast Tech went with some special design. I don't think it needs to be perpetrated to the businesses that want to develop in our town.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Claffey. How do the other commissioners feel on this?
Agree, Mr. Chairman.
You agree? Okay, thank you.
I agree
Commissioners-
with Commissioner Claffey also.
You agree? Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Commissioner Sobieski?
Yeah, I agree. I just gave Paul the information he was looking for. And I know they were specific to that project. And like I said, anytime you need to find anything like that, you can get a hold of contact. They have a list of the vendors.
On behalf of the applicant, we will try to get those lights, and to the extent not able, would you wish us to be consistent with what's on the other side of the road, or to just get
Pick something out that you feel is appropriate. I'm sure it'll be good.
Thank you.
Okay, you could try, but after that, you can put up whatever you feel like is appropriate. So we've gone over that. If there's no other questions, I'll call for a roll call vote on this.
Commissioner Claffey,
Yay.
Commissioner Fox,
Aye.
Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
Commissioner Linares,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Chairman Payne.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's unanimously approved. Congratulations to the applicant, and we look forward to another new development.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time and consideration.
Thank you. The next thing on our agenda is petition 29-21. If I could have Commissioner Sobieski, if you could read just that petition.
Yes, petition 29-21, zoning text amendment, section 3.19.1 to allow drive-through restaurant in the PD zone without drive-through requirements of section 3.15.4. Applicant Gibbs Oil Company, contact Kenneth R. Slater Jr., Esquire.
Thank you. So,
Second.
well, we haven't made a motion yet. That's just the
Oh, I
reading of the
thought-
petition.
I'm sorry.
Maybe, that's okay, Commissioner. I think we could have a little discussion on this, see how everybody feels. Renata believes that we don't necessarily need this. I believe, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but let me have Renata speak to this.
Sure. So there are specific distance requirements that are currently placed on the drive-through restaurant regulations that apply to certain zoning districts. Perhaps the Starbucks on Cedar Street is in a TOD, so I would imagine that their drive-through window is located differently because they're not in this tightly controlled district. That includes allowances for this, but distance requirements are related to driveway locations being 150 feet for corner intersections. There is one criteria that deals with traffic impact analysis. There is another subsection that talks about drive-through windows being located only on the side of the proposed restaurant building, and not perhaps if it's like a multi-tenant someplace else. And then this requirement for 300 square feet. All of these things you can review under your special permit. criteria. Traffic and impacts to the neighborhood are what you are actually looking at when you look at the special permits. So with that being said, I think that this would allow us a little bit more flexibility when we look at the regulations. This is consistent with the economic development chapter of our POCD. We have referred this to CROG and received a positive referral back. I recommend approval, and I recommend you set the date of the approval for, I believe, June 22nd, which is one day before your next meeting, which will allow them to then come to you with a special permit and site plan application at the next meeting, which expedite the whole process.
Thank you very much, Renata. Hopefully that answers everybody's questions or concerns. Does anybody have any questions? I believe we have enough tools in our zoning regulations to protect the residents and the abutting property owners with through our special permit process, and agree with the town planner. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll entertain for a motion. James, if you could put up the motion for 29-21. Commissioner Claffey, would you like to read that, please?
Petition 29-21 zoning text amendment, section 3.19.1 to allow a drive-through restaurant in the PD zone without drive-through requirements of section 3.15.4. Applicant Gibbs Oil Company, contact Kenneth R. Slater Jr. and SIG. Move to approve the zoning regulation amendments with the effective date of June 22nd, 2021. Reasons for the approval. The proposed amendment is consistent with the overall goals listed on page 55 and with policies listed on page 56 of the town's POCD Economic Development Chapter.
Okay, motion made. Do I have a second?
Second from Fox.
Commissioner Fox seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously for approval of 29-21.
Thank you very much. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. Next petition on the schedule is petition 31-21. If I could have Commissioner Woods, if you could read that, please.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Petition 31-21, special permit, section 6.2.5 to allow a freestanding 300 square foot sign at the southwest corner of 16 Fenn Road. Applicant Vincent Barrazzo and Dominic D'Agostino, owner, Fenn Road Associates LLC. Contact Mark S. Shipman.
Thank you very much. This is pretty straightforward for a directory sign. I don't think there's any concerns on this, but I'll go to Renata. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Renata?
Mr. Chair, no, this meets the section 6.2.5 of our zoning regulations. And
okay. Thank you very much, Renata. So it meets all our regulations and everything. Is there any questions from the commissioners? Okay, if you could put the motion up, James. I'll entertain somebody to read the motion, please.
Petition number 31-21, special permit, section 6.2.5, to allow a freestanding 300 square foot sign at the southwest corner of 16 Fenn Road. Applicant Vincent Porzio and Dominic D'Agostino, owner, Fenn Road Associates LLC. Contact Mark S. Shipman. Approve. Move to approve a special permit for a freestanding sign. Reasons for the approval. The proposal meets the criteria in section 6.2.5 of the Newington zoning regulation.
Motion made by Commissioner Fox. Do I have a?
Sobieski.
And it's been seconded by Commissioner Sobieski. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, next thing on the agenda is a discussion of the B zone. I'll turn it over to our town planner.
Okay, so as you can see in your packet, and let me just grab that. James, if you can display my document, that would be helpful. So this is sort of my first attempt at revising or, starting revisions to our zoning regulations in a comprehensive sense. As we discussed, because I brought this to you before, we have certain things that we're allowed in this particular district that were undefined, and I had proposed the definitions, in particular definition to professional office, which previously hasn't been defined. And scroll a little bit, there you go. To be an office occupied by doctors, dentists, accountants, and such. And then the second definition that I included is a definition of a trade, because that was something that I really didn't quite know what the commission meant by. To be a skilled profession, typically one requiring manual skill and special training, tailoring, carpentry, plumbing, and shoe repair. So this helps a little bit. And then James, if you can display a section 10. Previously, when I show you this document, you've seen that I've included purpose of the B zone. It is essentially a commercial district, but it is sort of like neighborhood commercial district. It's small parcels located in areas that are surrounded by residential, which then guide us how we, what kind of uses we should be allowing there. If you scroll down on this page, James, you can see sections E, F, G, H, and I. All those are moved from requiring special permit to essentially being allowed as of. Okay, I have I don't know why you have K, but at any rate, these are the these are already permitted with some modifications, I'll note, but they require special permit. One of the things that you will see in E is that, I'm proposing that we allow as of right places of assembly for recreation, health clubs, dance studios, as long as they require 20 or less parking spaces. And I carry this 20 parking spaces throughout the regulation. This is also for restaurants that are smaller, require 20 parking spaces, outdoor dining for 4 dining table or 20 patrons should be allowed by right. All of this means all of these uses, so everything that's listed under 310 can be approved by the zoning officer by a signature essentially at our counter. So that will make it like easier to get some of these permits. If you scroll down, James, so under 311.1, you can see that then any place of assembly for recreation requiring more than 20 parking spaces or 20 or more would still require a commission approval. So we're talking about perhaps larger places, larger impacts, things would go to you. The next one over is 311.3. Our discussion last time indicated to me that the commission was interested in just leaving this as it was. I kind of wanted to leave this still highlighted for discussion because I really think that having rental or storage of motor vehicles or sale of motor vehicle is not appropriate for the B zone. Again, you're looking at parcels that are smaller. that can't really accommodate this type of uses and are in the middle of generally residential neighborhoods. So a car dealer or car or rental or storage of motor vehicles, that is just something that is kind of impactful when located in these locations. And I cannot think of a single use that currently does this in a B zone. So we can leave that highlighted for the, for discussion. Again, restaurants that are larger would require special permit. Outdoor dining that's larger will require commission approval. And I think that's all that I have here. Now, what I would like you to do is we can discuss this a little bit tonight, but I will not propose a regulation amendment yet for anything. I would like to start with this and then do the proposals or do the drafts for the next business zones that are essentially based on whether or not we agree on what I'm showing you here. And then once we have gone through all the business zones, then we can discuss them individually and adopt them individually. And the reason for that is that as we go forward with this, I'm sure I will find uses in other zoning districts that are appropriate here. I will find perhaps some other need to modify, how big we go with, whether it's 20 parking spaces or whether it's, 10. So I would like to get some gut reaction from you on what you're seeing here so that I know how to proceed with my other districts.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Claffey, could you raise your comment and then could you run the meeting for a few minutes? I'll be right back. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. One of my comments, Renata, is this on the proposed changes, 311.3. Two questions I have. One is how that would or would not impact all the new auto-related uses in different areas along the pike, where different zones may back up to those. And the second one was more, I think, before you came aboard with the town, there was, I think it's Alumni Road, past the storage facility, there was a building that got put in on a thin sliver of land. And it's an auto-related use. I don't know exactly what they do in there, but I know it was maybe 2 years ago, because I think the business has been there for about a year. I'm kind of a little taken back on some of these like service, sale, repair, auto detailing, and why you would then want to take some out, but then put auto detailing back in. I don't. What's the kind of mindset on that?
So all of this is existing. So the way right now our regulations allow in all, and this is just B zone, so it would not necessarily have consequential impact on business on Berlin Turnpike, because that's going to be like considered later. But all of this as reads is allowed in B zone. Yeah. Now, as far as I know,
but it can't it is allowed in the zone, but it's impossible for it to comply with the regulations the way the regulations are written now.
That's true. However, I would like to leave certain things here, because the service and auto repair, we do have an existing business that does this. Eric will know the name, but it's right on Main Street. There is a car repairer, and the idea is not to outzone him. The idea is not to make somebody who is currently operating in the zoning district now non-conforming and, having to suffer consequences with intensification or increase of use or anything. I just don't believe that, in particular, sale, rental, or storage of vehicles is something that we would have to allow there, because I don't believe that we have any in B zone, and they do tend to be a bit intensive. So that's the reasoning. I mean,
And the auto detailing doesn't fall under the motor vehicle regulations.
auto detailing is not listed, correct? So under 614 or whatever it is, where we talk about what considers these auto-related uses, we don't list auto detailing. Auto detailing is a small kind of impact operation. They generally do not have a lot of noise or do not have a lot of, it tends to be a little bit smaller of an operation. So it could actually be okay in this district.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yeah, I was just gonna point out, yes, Renato's right, that B&D Auto on Main Street, and then also the Sunoco station over on New Britain Avenue, that is also in the B zone as well, and they do auto repair. Just so, and she's right, we're not trying to exclude them. Currently, they exist.
Mm-hmm. Right. We don't want to make anybody non-conforming either, if we can avoid that. Commissioner Gill?
Okay, what happens if B&D wants to sell after we put this in with those regulations there?
Well,
they're auto repair. We are not touching auto repair. They can sell.
Okay.
So what would happen is they couldn't sell to like a Honda dealership, so that then you have like 50 million like Civics parked on a tiny little parcel surrounded by a residential neighborhood.
So a new owner could go in there and do auto repairs like he does now,
right,
and just continue on with that.
Yep.
Correct.
Exactly. Okay. I really think that we should leave this alone. I know you've highlighted it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that those types of business don't really go into business zones, but I don't think that they can be, I don't think they'll comply with the regulations anyway. This whole auto regulations went to court. We finally have it straightened out. I don't think by leaving it in the regulations, it's going to hurt anything. Commissioners, there was somebody that had their hand up. Commissioner Claffey, was it?
Getting off that and moving on to the outdoor dining and restaurants. I mean, are we looking? We're not looking to reduce park. You talked about parking. I know we had it in our POCD to try to help out with reducing parking. I just want to make sure
So
we're not
this is-
start, as we start to maybe ponder changing some regulations, we're not adversely impacting what we just said we wanted to do in the POCD.
So once we get to that, I will want to do that. I will want to reduce how much parking we require, but that's a separate section. It's like a parking standards section of the regulation.
Yep.
All that we're talking about when I say 20 parking spaces, what this really means is how big a restaurant is. Because we regulate by floor area of a restaurant. So if it's a larger restaurant, it's got to come to the commission. If it's a smaller, then we can approve ourselves.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, any other questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, Councilor Petracco arrived at the meeting at 8:39.
Who arrived?
Councilor Petracco.
Okay. Okay. Is there
So
any
in
other-
general, your gut instinct on this is I'm on the right track. I should look into my second section of the regulations, kind of base it off of this. The next one will be, again, permitted as of right for a larger restaurant, because PD zone by nature is different zoning district than this. And then in the end, we will look at all of these drafts and discuss and tweak if we need to, unless you tell me otherwise.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. And I believe the other commissioners are. Is that
I'm in
correct,
agreement.
commissioners? Commissioner
I'm fine
Claffey?
with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I mean, it's definitely, I do, and I've said this before, with different items. I know the past year plus has been difficult, but as we start to kind of migrate out of this, I hope that we can discuss some of these bigger items like I'm seeing coming up potentially in a more in-person format. But I know that's not at our disposal right now, but this is not something to do hastily. It's, I think we can also do it very well here also in this format.
Okay, well, we'll definitely be looking at this again. I think Renata can proceed with the next section. And then when it's appropriate, we can deal with it. Any other commissioners have a question? All right, Renata, I think you can proceed with the next section when you get a chance in between all the development that's been coming in. If there's no other objection or any other discussion, I'll move to the next item, which is petitions for public hearing scheduling. And I don't know if Renata would like to talk about that at all.
I don't even know that we have any right now.
Okay. So, and then town planners report.
All right. So under town planners report, I will ask James to just pull up my future agenda. We can show you that, on Wetlands Commission, there are applications on Moreland Avenue and the Connecticut Avenue. The Connecticut Avenue actually also probably will have to wait until we fix our subdivision regulations, because they're in front of wetlands because of the subdivision requirement. The variance that is listed under the ZBA just went away. They modified the plan, so this list will get updated. And then on the TPZ next meeting agenda, we're going to be looking at special permit and site plan application for Gibbs, for the property that we just talked about, regulation amendment. I've been working on the Newington Junction a little bit. I am not sure if I will be able to present something on that at the next meeting or not. But if I am, I kind of wanted to announce that if anybody is watching and people are generally interested in that, I want public to know. So perhaps next meeting, I'll bring something with regards to Newington Junction to you. And then the next thing on my planner report was this House Bill 6107, which I mentioned to you at the last meeting. I would like, with your permission, Chairman, to do a brief overview of what was actually adopted by the Senate, and then we can talk about, how do we proceed with some of these amendments that will impact how we write our zoning regulations. Once governor signed this, we will have to start looking at our zoning regs and tweaking certain areas. So if you can display my PowerPoint, James. Okay, great. So this bill concerns essentially Zoning Enabling Act. You know that everything that you do is based on your regulations, but the authority to create regulations comes from the statutes. And these particular amendments have to do with accessory apartments, training for certain land use officials, affordable housing plan, and creation of this separate commission that is to look at the statutes. Now, all of this came out of series of bills that were originally proposed and were essentially decimated by Planning and Development Committee and then later House and Senate. So there are a couple of things that are important for you to know. The next slide, please. So for example, one of the main elements that is actually in the bill is this provision that by certain date, our zoning regulations must allow an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, on alongside or on the same lot with a single family house. This is per zoning district. So what this means is your regulations have to have a zoning district where single family homes are allowed that you designate to allow these ADUs. The municipalities can opt out of this requirement. So right now we allow ADUs, but they're subject to special permit. What the statute is saying is this has to be allowed by right on a zoning map. So let's say we pick a district, R12, and say that's where we will allow ADUs. What that would mean is that somebody can come up and present to us a plot plan with the separate building or addition that we then, the staff, would be able to approve without them having to go to you. The two-step process is described in the new law. It includes public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, and actually the whole thing has to be initiated by like 2/3 votes. On the Planning Commission end, you have to hold a hearing, you have to follow certain statutory things that are normal, and we do that now anyways. And one thing that is specific is you have to state on the record the reason why you are opting out of this requirement. And then after that step is done, it would go to town council, and they would essentially go through the same process, 2/3 vote, in order to opt out of the process. One of the provisions that was very hotly debated in the working group was this provision about, now we're going to allow ADUs that are affordable, but not deed restricted, right? They're just affordable by the market. And that will send us even further from the 10% requirement for affordable units, because these are not going to count when they tweaked the proposed statutes so that these new units do not count towards your total housing stock. So they will not actually bring these numbers down. Should I stop for questions here, or should I just go through the whole thing and then?
Commissioner Sobieski, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a couple of them. Number one, most of our housing in Newington, if you wanted to convert the basement, you have to have two entrances out, I believe. And most of the windows that are in here, like in my particular house, I couldn't get through. Matter of fact, then nobody in here could get through. So I'm getting concerned with the fact that if a fire breaks out, how do you get out of there if it's right where your exit is, number one?
So all of these proposed units, all of these, just to stop right there, all of these proposed units must still meet building and fire code. So this is specific to zoning only. You, the zoning commission, cannot require separate accesses, separate, things like that. But the building code and the fire code still apply. So if there is an accessibility issue from the building standpoint, this would not be allowed. It just wouldn't happen.
Right. And then my second question, you said that we allow this right now. The only thing that I'm aware of in the 10 years I've been on here is that we allow accessory dwelling units for family members. And they sign a intent form.
Correct. So this new law prohibits you. So this new law actually prohibits the zoning regulations from doing that. They specifically address this requirement in the zoning regulations that would tie this to a family member or whatever. That is specifically excluded. So if we as a municipality do not opt out of this, we will not have the ability to require that ADUs are occupied by family or by somebody that's familiar to it. But I will bring to you a thing, a concern of mine of regulating by familiarity, because there is the unit is a unit, people are people. So why do we restrict this to family?
Well, I think Commissioner Sobieski, you're probably in favor of opting out of this. Is that correct?
I would be, unless I want to see the entire thing with,
Okay.
but right now, what I'm looking at, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Gill, do you have a question?
Yes, now, if they wanted to put an addition onto an existing structure and they went into the, went right to the property line, which is part of
That
our.
is not going to be allowed. That would not be allowed. You still must meet all the setbacks.
Okay,
So
but
what this talks about is a process. You cannot have a special permit and you cannot regulate who lives in these units. Those are the essential elements of this proposal.
Okay. Commissioner Claffey, you had your hands up? I'm sorry, Commissioner Gill, are you all set or did you have another question?
No, I'm all set for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Claffey?
The one question I had in the first bullet was the existing lot coverage. Does Newington have a lot coverage percentage? I've said this prior to you coming on board. I think Newington should have a lot coverage in their zoning because that eliminates someone just putting accessory structure upon accessory structure and you know, it's never been discussed here in Newington. It's been, but no one's really wants to talk about it, that without having an existing lot coverage requirement, you kind of full court to people can just cover their properties pretty much packed with sheds, pools, decks, houses, pavement. So that's something to look for when it reverts back to, even if we opted out of this, I think our town needs to start looking more at putting in a lot coverage requirement in some areas, some zoning areas.
Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Did you have something else, Commissioner?
No, I hit it by accident.
No problem. You know, I'd like to hear the rest of the proposal from Renata, but I'm leaning towards opting out of this. One of the main reasons is that these accessory apartments would not count for affordable housing. We are extremely close to our 10%, and our town is naturally affordable. So unless something changes, I'm leaning towards opting out of this. I'll turn it over to Renata so she could finish her presentation.
All right, so if you can move to the next slide, James. And then next thing that, you know, I kind of have a sense that you will have some strong opinion about is the parking requirements. So by default, there is a requirement in the statute now that says you cannot ask for more than one space for studio or one bedroom or two spaces for the larger housing units. So this goes to the parking requirement and sets essentially maximum standards that you can have in your regulations. There are towns out somewhere in Connecticut that literally require like 3 parking spaces per one bedroom apartment. And they use those to restrict how many of these smaller units they can have. And the reason why these are in there are to sort of a reaction to these excessive requirements. This is another one of these provisions off of which the municipality can opt out if we choose to do so. And the process is essentially the same. So unless there are any other questions, I'll just move to the next slide. So, you know, when we talk about opting out or not opting out, these are kind of things that will guide whether or not, you know, that discussion goes one way or the other way. These provisions are not something that the municipality can opt out. So we will have to have zoning regulations that provide opportunities for housing, and we will have to be able to show that. Including multifamily housing, we have those, so I don't necessarily think that this is going to be such a huge issue for us. The Plan of Conservation and Development, State Plan of Conservation and Development talks about regional affordability. So this item where we meet the needs outlined in the State of Plan of Conservation and Development is something that we will have to look into closer if we're talking about opting out of the ADU provision. But that definitely is, you know, included in the statute. And then, you know, they're kind of stepping away from this fluff language of encourage and promote. You know, they're essentially saying you're required to have a regulation that do this. The next slide, James, talk about perhaps, you know, what Commissioner Claffey was going to address, this overcrowding of land. Can you change the slide, please? And that language has been removed. The language in the statute that allowed municipalities to have regulations that talk about, you know, we will prevent the overcrowding of land and avoid undue concentration of population. That's no longer allowed. However, on the flip side of that, this statute also encourages municipalities to consider all kinds of environmental impacts. So when we talk about impervious surface in particular, like that would be a good standard to look at because, you know, it applies to climate change issues and environmental protection issues, and you know, we can do it with that in mind. The regulations are now going to be required to design, to have a language that talks about protection of historic, tribal, cultural, and environmental resources, you know, just what I mentioned. Consider impacts to adjacent municipalities, address disparities in housing needs, and this is, again, regional basis out of the State Plan of Conservation and Development. So we kind of have to not just, you know, comply with us. We also have to look at the broader region a little bit with this. The one thing that has been removed from the enabling statute is this word character as it applies to, in particular, issuance of special permit. You know, we talk about harmony of development within neighborhood and, you know, this, that, and the other thing, but what they're saying now is we, the municipality, can define the character of our zoning district. And that character has to be defined in terms that include, you know, physical scale of development and architecture and things like that, traffic impacts, but not necessarily whether a you know, area is designated for rental occupancy or not. Next slide, please. And then I think one of the biggest thing is the city-state legislative department will create, and they're required to do this like pretty much now, to create this commission on Connecticut housing development and future. And this commission is the commission that will review all of our zoning regulations for compliance with this statute now, and also assess, you know, our situation as a state, as a region, and on each individual municipality. And then they will do the affordable housing plan requirement review and compare how we are doing with that. Next thing, next slide talks about evaluation of traffic impacts. So when I was talking about character, I said, you can still look at these impacts. But for example, they're saying in this enabling statute, you don't have to look at the level of service at the intersection measure. You can actually include this vehicle mile travel number, which is much more helpful, in particular in areas such as TOD areas and areas that are more downtownish and kind of urbanish in nature. So we can consider mitigation strategies like bicycle lines and pedestrian and transit oriented stuff. And then my last slide talks about training. So one of the elements that came out of this is that, the zoning enforcement officers cannot just be, people that are trained in enforcement, like former police officers that never go through any kind of land use training. So this kicks in January 1, 2023. Our excellent zoning enforcement officer is going to get certified before that, much before that. So we're going to be in good shape on that. But also you on the commission and will be required to take 4 hours of training. 1 of those hours will be on fair and affordable housing. And this 4-hour requirement spans every 2 years. So it will have to be kind of like redone on the continuing basis. This has caused a lot of discussion, again, in a working group, because there is an awareness that it's difficult to find people that are willing to serve on these commissions. But then on the flip side of that, this is a privilege to be on the planning commission. You make decisions that are very important and people really should be trained. So that's what's coming out of that. So going forward, I think I would like, there is like some other stuff that are really not that big deal for us. So 8-30G this talks about fees that we charge. Essentially, I guess some municipalities charged a lot more money for affordable housing development versus like regular housing development. That's not the case with us, so we don't have to worry about that. Cottage food that is regulated by state, it's been something introduced about 3 years ago, I believe. It's essentially a home occupation permit to have like a food cottage industry, and we can't prohibit against that, nor do we in Newington. So that's another one that I'm not particularly concerned with. Can you bring next slide? Because these last 2 I didn't even print out for myself, James. And then, this talks about how do you get the authority to do the overlay zones, mobile home regulation, and affordable housing plan. Neither one of these elements on the last 2 pages is of a great deal of concern for me. We're good with all that. Now, what I would like to do is, first of all, if you have questions, perhaps I can answer them. This is not my law. I didn't write it. And I don't necessarily claim that I super understand like every line in it, but if I can help answer a question, I will do that. And then we can talk about, what do we do going forward? What do we do going forward? I would recommend that we wait a little bit before we just jump first ones on the wagon of opting out of this, because I am interested to see how does this go and how does state react to the reasons given to the opt-out provisions. We have, a couple of years to do it. So we do have some time. It's not pressing. But it should be talked about and started early so that we know, that we're ready when we want to be ready.
Very good. Thank you very much, Renata. Our zoning enforcement officer has a question possibly or a comment. Mr. Hinckley?
Yeah, I was just going to comment for Commissioner Claffey. We do have somewhat of a lot coverage for front yards and pavement that is currently in place. It's no more than 50% of the front yard can be paved with impervious. But like you said, I believe that is the only type of lot coverage zoning regulation we currently have.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions from the commissioners concerning this? I think we should think about this and then within the next meeting or two, talk about it a little bit more and see if we want to opt out of this and see what kind of reasons we would want to place in for that. Any comments from commissioners? Okay, we'll come back to this at a future meeting. We have some time. Next thing on is communications. Is there any communications?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, we're at public participation. If there's anybody from the public that would like to make a comment or have a question, now's the time to raise your hand, please. With the Zoom application, raise your hand if you'd like to participate. If you're calling in, you could dial *9. Mr. Hinckley.
Just a quick for Renata, were you going to discuss the issue with Connecticut Avenue and the regs?
I did, Mr. Chair. I completely forgot something that I wanted to bring up under my report. Would you like to go with the public first and then we can return to me?
No, you can go right ahead, and then if public comes in, we'll
All
go
right,
back to public.
So at the beginning of the meeting, we took off of the agenda the Connecticut Avenue proposal to create those interior lots. The reason for that is that under our zoning regulation, we allow creation of 2 interior lots. Under our subdivision regulation, we allow creation of only one interior lot. So I would like, and I don't know whether your preference is really to have 2 lots or 1 lot, but I would suspect that the zoning regulation came in later. So at the most recent time, as far as I can understand, the commission was open to creation of 2 lots. So with your permission, I would like to propose amendment to the subdivision regulation, because that one, you can't even go and get a variance. Like, they literally have to change the regulation to allow 2 interior lots. Other option would be to bring to you a zoning regulation amendment that reduces creation of interior lots from 2 to 1, but they need to be the same. So if you could tell me what your recommendation would be right now, so that I can propose that, as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think it's always been where we could create 2. At one time, the previous commission had taken this completely out, but then we put it back in the regulations. And maybe that's what happened with everything didn't get corrected. I'm in favor of having 2 rear lots, because the way the property, some of the property in Newington was divided, there's a lot of deep lots. So I'll open it up for commissioners' comments and questions. Anybody have any concerns on this? Is everybody in agreement with our town planner, Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes, Chairman Payne, didn't we, maybe my memory's failing, but didn't we, when Commissioner Aida was here, didn't we discuss splitting the rear lots into 2 at one time off of, I can't remember, was Maple Avenue one of those 2? I can't remember.
Well,
we had a good sized lot in there.
It was to bring the rear lots back in there, because they were taken out, and the way the land was divided up years and years ago when the town was formed, there was a lot of deep lots. So, and they always started with rear lots, and always 2 were allowed. And so I think we should continue with that and correct our subdivision regulations. Commissioner Woods?
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sobieski.
But you do remember the splitting of the lot on Maple, I can't remember if it was Maple Hill or whatever. I know
Yeah.
one and we split like that.
Yep, I do remember. Commissioner Woods?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in agreement with the planner, and I think we should keep it at the 2 subdivision. It's back where it was. I think it was just an oversight that it probably didn't get picked up when it got changed. I do remember where there was a brief period of time that the commission, for whatever reason at the time, deleted the rear lots, and I'm glad to see it back. And again, I think it needs to be at the 2.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Woods.
Yep.
Anybody else have any comments? Anybody else? Everybody in favor of correcting the regulations to allow 2? Is it? Just want to make sure we give Renata the correct direction. Is everybody in favor of that? Commissioner Haggerty?
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of that.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Haggerty. Commissioner Fox?
Yeah, I'm in, and I think I was on the commission when we first deleted the interior lots, and for the life of me, I can't remember why. I know it created quite a stir, but yeah, I'm for being.
Okay, thank you.
All
right.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your direction.
Okay, thank you very much, Renata. So we're going to go back to public participation. If there's anybody from the public that would like to ask us a question or make a comment. Anybody from the public? Hearing none. Remarks by commissioners? Any remarks by the commissioners? All right, I think we had a very good meeting, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a
So
motion to
moved,
adjourn,
Fox.
Sobieski.
Motion made by Commissioner Sobieski, seconded by Fox. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you very much, commissioners. Thank you, Renata. Thank you, James. And have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night,
Have a
everyone.
good night.
Great.
Well, y'all.